We're all aware that Assassin's Creed has been going on for a very long time, and with how many games there are, the number of editions tied to each game has become pretty nuts. In fact, my rough estimation is there is over 100 different editions for the 14 mainline games. You start off with the standard edition of a game, then you would get into the not so rare deluxe edition stuff, and then you start drifting into the collector territory with collector's editions. But every now and then, you stumble on editions that feel almost unreal with how limited they are. For example, did you know that Ubisoft once released an Assassin's Creed Origins edition that was priced at $800? Or perhaps there was an edition so rare that only 8 of them were ever made. Now this video will not contain every edition of each mainline game, as that would be very boring for a video, but instead just the ones I feel like are the rarest and most interesting to talk about. You know, while researching for this video, I kept seeing editions that made me think, yeah, I want that. Hey Ubisoft, if you're watching, come on, hook me up with something, pretty please. Also, let me give a huge shout out to a website named Assassin's Collection. That website helped a ton with this video. If you like looking into Assassin's Creed collectibles, then that place is gold. If this video hits 1500 likes, I will make another video where we take a look at the rarest real-life Assassin's Creed items that exist. I'm talking about items that can cost over 50,000 euros that Ubisoft released. So yeah, if you have any of these editions that I talk about in this video, then comment down below. Anyway, let's jump straight in. Assassin's Creed 1 is the first game in this long-running franchise, and not many people realize, but there are a couple unique editions the first game had. I think the rarest one would easily be the Premium Limited Edition. Now, this is one of those releases that feels like a myth at this point, kind of like an urban legend. And the reason is because it only came out in Korea back in 2007 at a price of $60, or rather 89,000 South Korean won. So, you know, already good luck finding it anywhere else. And the way it was packed makes it feel more like a care package than a game edition. You get the standard copy of the game, which is normal, right? Then you get a steelbook, a bonus DVD, which is basically developer diaries and behind the scenes stuff, and here's where it gets very interesting. You also had a comic book, which was written by none other than Corey May himself. You also had a bottle opener, a card holder, an Xbox 360 faceplate, which, oh man, that brings back memories. Who remembers when those faceplates used to be so cool to have? And last but not least, a white hoodie, which to be fair looks quite clean. And you know what, for a first game in a brand new franchise, I think Ubisoft went way harder on this than anybody expected. Now the crazy part is how impossible this edition is to track down now. I tried searching around and it's basically a ghost. The issue is not the pricing itself, but rather finding somebody selling the entire Premium Limited Edition as a whole thing and not in pieces. There are no listings on eBay, but I did find this one listing on a random Korean website. But that's literally the only one I found. It's the kind of edition where you know a collector that has it tucked away, or you're simply never seeing it in person. For something that wasn't marketed worldwide, it became one of the rarest early Assassin's Creed editions without even trying. Now next we have the Master Assassin edition for Assassin's Creed 2, which released at $100 in 2009. Now this one isn't impossible to find like the Assassin's Creed 1 Premium Limited Edition, but for a game that had a mountain of special editions, like seriously, this game had a ton of editions, I think this one sits at the top in terms of, you know, demand. It dropped only in the US and was locked behind GameStop. So already if you did not grab it back then, your chances were pretty much done. That alone already trimmed the number of copies floating around today. Inside the box you got a bunch of stuff that actually felt worth owning. The Ezio statue was the big highlight, and for a figure made all the way back then, it still looks quite decent. Of course not as insane as the likes of what Pure Arts are doing right now. You also got the art book, a metal case, a bonus DVD that digs into how the game was made, and a couple unlockables for the game itself, which I'm sure are now useless because everything is unlocked if you play the game now. So yeah, this edition is nothing over the top, but everything fit the vibe of the franchise at the time. What puts this edition into the rare category is how the price has climbed. I checked around and the listings have jumped over $200 depending on the condition, and for an Assassin's Creed 2 item that's quite a lot. And it shows how much collectors still care about this version. In fact, I used to have this edition back in the day, but I sold it years ago when times were tough. Matter of fact, quite a few I used to have in this video, but not anymore. This next edition is one of my favorite ones in this entire video, and it shows how cheap everything used to be compared to now. This is the limited codex edition for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which released across just Australia and Europe in 2010. And if you lived in the UK, it went for about £70, which £70 now, by the way, is the kind of price you would pay for an actual game itself. Inflation is a bitch. Once you see what was inside though, it kind of makes sense. The box itself came shaped like a Renaissance style chest, and this box looked incredible on a shelf. I do miss stuff like this. We rarely see this much effort put into game editions, and you can notice it with how games like Valhalla, Mirage and Shadows had less effort put into their editions. Now inside this Brotherhood Limited Codex edition, apart from that beautiful Renaissance style box, you have the game. A leather style codex that feels like something Ezio would actually carry around during that time, which I want, a map of Rome, some sketch cards, and a set of multiplayer cards. Of course now the multiplayer is no longer a thing sadly, so rest in peace. Oh, and they even threw in the Assassin's Creed Lineage short film on a DVD, as well as a bonus DVD and the full soundtrack. Oh, and I guess you did get a code for the Helmschmidt Drachen armor, which of course now in 2025 if you play the game for the first time, is pretty much useless because it's in the game. Among Brotherhood editions, this one is easily the standout. It's not impossible to find, but prices keep creeping up because collectors love how complete this one feels. The Templar Collector Edition for Assassin's Creed Revelations is one of those regional drops that went way under the radar, which is probably why it's such a nightmare to find now. It was released in Italy in 2011 for just under €100, and it was exclusive to a store chain called Open Games. That alone already boxed it into a tiny corner of the market. If you did not live in Italy, or if you didn't know it existed, then you never had a shot. Now, the packaging of this one looked clean. It was a white box that held everything from the regular collected edition plus one big bonus, which is the Ezio statue. It stands around 22 centimeters tall, and it came in its own display box, which adds to the whole premium feel. You also get the typical essentials like, the art book, the soundtrack, the Embers short film, which is a nice touch, and the usual collector's edition bits packed in. But trying to find this edition specifically in today's day and age is quite tricky. I could not spot any active listings on eBay or the usual collector sites. It's one of those editions that just sits in a private collection, and when it does show up, it's gone before you even finish clicking the page. The Connor Saga Limited Edition is one of the strangest Assassin's Creed releases ever, and is pretty much a perfect example of Ubisoft doing something cool then hiding it in one country. This launched only in Japan in 2014 for the PlayStation 3, and they capped it at around 5,000 copies ever made, and it will cost you around 10,000 yen, which is like $60. If you've ever tried buying anything from Japan second hand, you know how hard that already makes it. Most sellers don't ship out of the country, so this edition just stays locked away over there. The box itself looks great, but inside you get a ton of content. You get Assassin's Creed 3 itself, you get all 3 parts of the Tyranny of the King Washington DLC, you get the Benedict Arnold missions, Liberation HD on disc, and a 2-disc soundtrack. But as for a collector's item, I would say the real standout is the Japanese edition of the Assassin's Creed Encyclopedia. And I know a few collectors that go after that more than anything else in the set. It's quite interesting because this edition does a good job showing how it celebrates Connor despite him having only one main game. It feels like Ubisoft wanted to push the character a bit more in Japan. Even now it shows up on places like Play Asia sometimes, but once it's gone, it stays gone for months. Staying on the theme of Connor and Assassin's Creed 3, this might be the rarest one in this entire video by far. This is the Ultimate Special Edition for Assassin's Creed 3, which is on a completely different level from pretty much anything Ubisoft has ever made. Now this was not no normal retail release. It was an Australian exclusive tied to a charity event, so fair play, and the entire production run was only 10 units. 8 of them were auctioned on eBay to raise money for the Sydney Children's Hospital Foundation, and the last 2 were used as promotional pieces. Now that alone makes it one of the rarest Assassin's Creed items ever produced. The whole thing comes packed inside a huge Assassin's Creed 3 themed trunk. Once you open it, you're hit with a ton of gear. It includes the full Freedom Edition of Assassin's Creed 3, a physical copy of Liberation, a super cool backpack which I want so badly, a tomahawk-shaped USB stick which gets points for uniqueness, a metal buckle, some postcards, a notebook, a wristband, a steelbook, LED figurines, 2 different keychains. Holy moly, that's a lot, right? They even bundled DLC for both Assassin's Creed 3 and Liberation, making it feel like a complete Connor era package. Because this was tied to charity and never sold in stores, the resale market is absolutely tiny. I've seen one guy on Reddit mention listing theirs with a starting bid of around 1,200 Australian dollars, which if you think about it makes sense for something this limited. If somehow somebody watching this has it, I will buy this off you for a packet of biscuits. That sounds like a good deal, right? Moving on to Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and I have a few to talk about. But this one right here, this Black Book Edition, this is one of those releases that almost feels hidden from the rest of the world. It dropped only in 2 countries, and it's 2 countries you would never guess. Denmark and Sweden back in 2013, and it was exclusive to Webhallen, which I believe is like some online retailer exclusive to those countries. So that already makes it hard to get your hands on. On top of that, this edition was capped at just 1,000 copies ever made, each individually numbered, so once they were sold out, that was it. Now the whole thing is built around this faux bookcase. It looks like a thick leather style hardcover with the Black Flag skull logo stamped in gold. When you open it, you aren't greeted with pages. Instead, this is just compartments for the game disc and manual, which is pretty different from the usual big boxes we got during the Assassin's Creed Black Flag era. Content wise, it's pretty simple. You get the standard copy of the game and a special steelbook tucked away inside the book casing. That's it. Pretty simple, right? There's no statue or map or soundtrack, but I think the low production number and the region lock is what gives this edition its rarity. It barely shows up on resale sites, and when it does, it often gets scooped up immediately. And another Black Flag edition that's rare is the Corsair edition. And yes, Corsair, as in computer peripherals Corsair. This is a regional exclusive that I think is pretty cool, as almost everybody has never heard of it. This one launched only in Italy, and just like a few other rare Assassin's Creed editions, it was locked behind the Open Game Store chain. If you did not live near one of those or did not know this edition existed when pre-orders opened, you missed it completely. Now the box itself isn't huge, but the content inside is pretty fun. Inside you get everything from the Skull edition, which is a different edition that's not rare in comparison, so that's why it's not in this video. But regardless, you get the steelbook, the art book, and the extra missions and in-game content. But this is the part I like, and it's one of my favorite pieces in any Assassin's Creed collection, and that is the replica spyglass. This comes in a wooden presentation box, and it looks something straight out of the actual game. For what it offered, the price at launch was surprisingly low, sitting at just under €100. Now these days, it's quite tricky to find. Listings would pop up once in a while, usually from Italian sellers, but they tend to disappear fast. This edition might not be as limited as the previous edition I talked about, which was the Black Book edition, but I would say in terms of availability, it feels just as rare. And the last Black Flag edition I want to show you is another rare one, which thinking of it now, I don't know why I said that. All of these editions in this video are rare, but this one is the Wilkinson edition. And yes, you may recognize the name Wilkinson, as in the shaving company Wilkinson. Now this edition was not something the public could buy. In fact, it came out in Spain in 2013, and instead of hitting store shelves, it was handed out to YouTubers, influencers, and a few VIPs as part of a promotional push. Now that alone already puts it in a completely different bracket in terms of rarity compared to other usual collector's editions. The box looks great, styled like a small pirate chest with the Black Flag logo and the Wilkinson sword branding. Inside you would get a full copy of the game, a limited edition razor, which was quite funny but it was made specifically for this collaboration. There was also a bottled map with details about a contest, a promotional booklet, and a disc with extra content. Now you can tell the contents of this edition were, promotional things, and the razor sounds random at first, but at that time, Wilkinson Sword did a few video game crossovers, and this one ended up being the most memorable. They also did one for Unity, which is pretty much the same idea, but because these were never sold and the distribution is tiny, this edition is incredibly hard to find now, and unless you were on Ubisoft's invite list, you never had a shot at owning it. Now this one right here is Assassin's Creed Unity at its most dramatic. The Guillotine Collector's Case dropped in 2014, and the funny part is that it didn't even come with the actual game inside the box. Ubisoft shipped the special edition separately, which still feels crazy considering the price. This edition released across Europe for around £120, and you could only get it through the Uplay shop, so this wasn't something you'd randomly stumble on at retail. The main attraction is the huge Arno statue that's built around a full guillotine, and this statue is probably within my top 5 Assassin's Creed statues period. I actually had this statue before, but of course I got rid of it years ago when I was a broke boy. I want to get it again. Everything else packed inside is pretty cool as well. You got the exclusive metal case game, a chunky art book, a cloth style Paris map, a framed canvas print, lithographs, a tarot card game which is unique in itself, and even a wooden music box. It's a lot, but it's some pretty good stuff if I'm being honest. Checking prices now, it's still floating around online, but the problem is the value jumps all over the place. There are some listings that sit near 70, and that would be because it's missing parts. But there would be other listings that would creep close to $200, and for a Unity item that's pretty solid, and it shows people still chase this set. Assassin's Creed Syndicate had a lot of editions, but the Big Ben collector's case is the one that really feels like Ubisoft tried to make something special. This edition was sold only through the Uplay shop when the game launched in 2015 for $150, and the whole thing is packed inside a box style like a mini version of the famous clock face. It looks great on the shelf and stands out even before you open it, so bonus points for design for sure. Inside you get Jacob in the Big Ben style figure, which is a solid 30 centimeters tall and has quite a lot of detail on it. Along with that you got the steelbook, the art book, the London map printed on both sides, the soundtrack, and my favorite, which is a flask, which is quite surprising because this one surprisingly looks very good, especially for something tossed into a game bundle. Oh, and Ubisoft even let fans vote on which lithograph would be included, so the one inside your edition depended on that old pre-order poll. And since the season pass was bundled in, this was Syndicate's top tier package. Prices now are completely all over the place. Some listings on eBay sit around 30 or 40, but that's because they miss important parts like the steelbook or the statue, while complete sets shoot into the hundreds. I think this edition right here might be the most expensive one in this video by far, and it's of course starting with the RPG era of Assassin's Creed with Origins. The Dawn of the Creed Legendary Edition is easily one of the most over-the-top releases the franchise has ever had. This thing released at $800 back in 2017, and even at that price it sold out instantly because they capped it at only 999 units. 200 of those stayed in North America, and the rest went worldwide, so the odds of finding one today are basically zero unless you're lucky or rich or both. The statue is the star of the whole package. Bike and Senju together stand almost 30 inches tall, and the detail on it makes every other Assassin's Creed statue look tiny. Ubisoft shipped the statue early if you pre-ordered it, along with the amulet and the lithographs, and then they sent the rest of the content at launch, which thinking of it now is quite weird because it felt like some two-part drop. I've seen literal collectors treat this edition like a holy grail. I saw people online saying they paid close to $1,000 for it years after release, and I'm not gonna lie, that sounds about right. With how limited this is and how massive the statue is, I think this is one of those editions that you only ever see in private collections. I doubt I'd ever get my hands on it. And last but not least, we have Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and this game has a bunch of collector sets, but the Pantheon edition is the one I would say most people point to when they talk about the crazy era of Ubisoft doing massive dioramas. This thing was sold only on the Ubisoft store, and the moment you see it in person, you'll understand why it turned into a huge collector flex. The diorama is enormous. Alexios' mid-flight spear first going right into a cult soldier, and the whole scene stretches out across this long base with broken columns and ruins. You know, photos don't really do it justice. What makes it even cooler is how you could swap Alexios with the standalone Cassandra figure if you own that one too. So people built their own version depending on who they picked in the game. Now, along with the massive statue, you got the usual. You know, the steelbook, the art book, the world map, the soundtrack, and a lithograph tied to Athens. The season pass was included too, which was nice considering how much post-launch content Assassin's Creed Odyssey ended up having. But finding this specific edition today in its full package is tricky. I do believe at launch it was great to get, and probably an investment if anything. But yeah, today, good luck getting it. The size alone of that statue makes it feel like a centerpiece in any Assassin's Creed collection. I would get this one for sure if I had the bloody space. And there we have it. Those are the rarest editions of, certain Assassin's Creed games. Of course, I didn't mention the likes of Valhalla, Mirage, or Shadows, or Liberation, or even Freedom Cry. simply because those games did not have anything interesting tied to them, especially editions that would be considered rare. It's quite sad to think about because Valhalla was the first game in the PlayStation 5 era, and it was also the first game in the digital era, so you can kind of see the decline of, cool editions being brought to light. If you had any editions mentioned in this video, then let me know down in the comments below. I'm actually very curious to see. And yeah, if you did enjoy this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all in the next one.